On behalf of the History San Jose Board of Directors and Alita Bray in the back, who's our acting president CEO, I want to welcome you all and let you know of something I didn't mention last June when we had our last event. Many of you have come over the years to these history makers, and David Crossan, our president CEO, was the moderator for many of those years, and he's the one who really originated the series and did a beautiful job of bringing you some fascinating speakers over the years. And so you probably know that David has left History San Jose and gone on to be director of the California Historical Society, and actually has moved to San Francisco. So we wish him well, and we want to keep this program going. So thank you all for showing up and voting for keeping it going as well. Tonight we have the wonderful topic of Speed City, which I think all of you know refers to San Jose State College, period from 1940 to 1969, and athletics, and really a lot bigger issues than athletics, but we'll get into that. I wanted to remind you, the handouts that you received, the big green page announces the opening of the exhibition, Speed City from Civil Rights to Black Power, that's going to be opening to the public on January 12th of this coming year, and will run through the end of 2007. So we'll have fascinating stories of many of the athletes and many of the eras that our guest curator Urla Hill, who's part of our panel tonight, has divided that period from 1940 to 1969, and we'll talk about all the changes that our country went through and our city went through, and the people, the athletes at San Jose State went through during that time. Your blue sheet is our survey that we do every time, and as a little incentive to get you to fill that out, we will collect those sheets at the end of the program, and we will pull 2 surveys out of our bag, and 2 people will win a free book tonight. So that encourages you to fill those out. And then the yellow slip has to do with a wonderful opportunity that Barnes & Noble is giving History San Jose, and that is a benefit. If you are interested in making a purchase tonight or any time through the end of Saturday, August 12th, here at this store, History San Jose will receive a percentage of the proceeds from those sales. So you do need to present the voucher at the cash register or just mention it to them when you go to checkout. And now, business aside, and I'd like to introduce our moderator tonight, Leigh Weimers, who I think is familiar to everyone, has been a columnist at the Mercury News for many years and retired just last fall. And we're happy that he's willing to come volunteer at History San Jose and be our moderator tonight. Leigh?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marilyn. Thank you very much. As anybody who's ever seen me perform athletically, you know that's not the reason I'm here tonight. I'm challenged in walking and chewing gum simultaneously. But I was fortunate enough, truly fortunate, to be a student at San Jose State from 1955 through mid-year 1958. The heyday of Speed City. It was just getting its name in. Bud Winter, the coach of the track team, was really establishing things. Yoshihiro Uchida had he was working hard to get his programs up and running. And it was just a magic time. I treasure those moments. We were all, as students, inordinately proud of the student athletes who were representing San Jose State locally, statewide, and on the world stage. They were just tremendous performers. And one thing that sticks out in my mind in thinking back upon this, if anybody ever tells you one person can't make a difference, they are absolutely wrong. In this case, we have some people who made a tremendous difference at San Jose State. One person, Bud Winter, in track. One person, Yoshihiro Uchida, in judo and almost everything else. And so Bud isn't here tonight. Fortunately, Yosh is. And so in discussing this evening, they'll all make brief presentations, and then you'll have a chance to ask questions and share your memories if you have them. and we'll get it all down on video, and this will be recorded for posterity. So another way to keep Speed City alive. As I said, our speakers tonight on the panel will include Yoshihiro Uchida, who actually made Judo an accepted sport. One man working his tail off, and he just did it. He was introduced, it finally became a judged to be a sport in 1964. It took that long. And he's been coaching at San Jose State for 60 years, so he remembers all of this period going on, and is a person we'll want to listen to attentively this evening. Also on your panel, on my far right, is Ben Tucker, who was one of the student athletes at San Jose State. And he and his teammates did pretty good. They won some NC2A championships, even though nobody expected, I don't know, African Americans to run distance. I don't know. Can you guys do that? Yeah, I guess you can.
They were pretty good too.
That's doggone right. Eyes were opened. That's for sure. And leading off our program tonight, to give you an overview of the Speed City program, and what we're going to be talking about tonight is Urla Hill, the curator of the exhibit Speed City. And she's been looking at this phenomenon, really, since she left her job as a sports writer in 1994. And she began substitute teaching with former San Jose State sprinter Bobby Pointer. And in sharing and listening to what Bobby had to say, it got Urla fired up. And the result is what we're sitting here tonight going to be talking about. She's now working on her doctorate at the University of Maryland on this very subject for this evening. So to get us rolling tonight, Urla Hill, please.
Does this? Okay. This is really kind of a long story, and I don't want to go into a lot of different things, but I will. I'd like to give credit to my parents just because they got me started with my love of history, in particular my mother. My parents were older than everyone else's parents, so while a lot of my friends' parents were coming back from Vietnam, I talked about my dad being in World War II. So he was typically 10 to 20 years older than everybody else's dad who I knew. My mother grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, down the street from Elvis Presley's Graceland, so that started my fascination with Elvis. I picked this up at Graceland, an album. But my mother also inspired my love for history. While my friends were doing typical book reports on George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, my mother had me do something on Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman, George Washington Carver. So that's how my mother inspired my love of looking back at what had been. My father had hopes that I would become a mathematician. He, if anybody remembers the slide ruler, I had them in all different shapes and sizes. They came in circles and long and short. He had hopes I would become a mathematician, but sitting me in front of ABC's Wide World of Sports on Sunday while Muhammad Ali fought, started something different. And then I fell in love with Roger Staubach from the Dallas Cowboys. So I became a Dallas Cowboy fanatic, and I knew I wanted to be a sports writer. But two things I can say about my father and history is when I was 5, he gave me Dick Gregory's book, and then he also gave me a book by Huey Newton, and I could not read those books at that time, but I still have them. So history was in my father. I mean, I guess he knew it was going on and it was being made, but I don't know if he understood that his 5-year-old daughter could not comprehend what was going on in those books. John Carlos and Tommy Smith, Harry Edwards, when I was at San Jose State during the 80s, I spent lots of time in the old library that used to be on the corner, and people who went there probably remember the stacks. I used to go in there and pull magazines out. But unfortunately, other people had gone in there before me and pulled out, pages if there was any article on John, Tommy, Harry Edwards. So I didn't always get to see those articles, but I had grown up with an appreciation for John Carlos and Tommy Smith because my father, when we were little, we always went to visit his different friends who were in the military. They all had sons who had the poster of John Carlos and Tommy Smith on their walls. And then when I got to San Jose State, I found out that those two had gone to San Jose State. When I left San Jose State, I became a sports writer. But millions of overtimes kind of tired me of sitting, behind a table, running down to get interviews with different players, going in locker rooms, all that stuff. Bored me. One year I came home and I said, I've got to get out of that. My mom said, why don't you move back home and go to school? So why not? Live off my parents for a while, go to school. It's been going on for 10 years now. So I came back to San Jose State, and I had worked in the School of Social Sciences while I was a student. There was one professor in particular, Dr. Stephen Milner, and he had gone to San Jose State. So I used to go in there and talk to him about his experiences at San Jose State. So although that had gotten me into appreciating what was going on at San Jose State at the time, being a black female who wanted to look at black women in the sporting world, I chose to start looking at Wilma Rudolph and the Tennessee State Tiger Bells. Unfortunately, by the end of the year when I had come back to San Jose in 1994, Wilma Rudolph had just died of cancer. So I started substitute teaching, and he mentioned that Bob Pointer is the person who actually got me started in all this San Jose State stuff. While I was doing a second degree in African American Studies, although I was doing research on black female athletes, Wilma Rudolph and her teammates, Coach Pointer was always talking to me about, oh yeah, I knew Wilma Rudolph. We used to see them at track meets. We used to party with them when we were at track meets on the weekend. All these different stories he had. But the interesting thing was that he started telling me stories about what went on in San Jose during the time period he was an athlete. And one of the things that struck me was he said when he got off the bus and he didn't see anyone who looked like him, he was kind of shocked. He didn't know that when he came to San Jose, he had never been here. So he basically just told Bud Winter, oh, I'll go to San Jose State. And then he never, came to visit, as we all see athletes doing today, taking their college visits. He never came. In fact, he took a Greyhound bus here. Coach Winter met them at the bus station, the Greyhound station that's still in downtown San Jose, and took him over to Chuck Alexander's house. Chuck Alexander is another pioneer at San Jose State. He was a black football player, and he happens to be in the audience tonight. He and his father were able to obtain a house in which all the black athletes lived. I think it was either 1 or 2 years later, there was another black athlete, Joel Wyrick's father. He also obtained a house. So that's where basically the black students and athletes lived, in particular the males. Although there were black females on campus, there weren't as many black females as there were black males. So different things started happening in terms of their socializing. And one of the things is the Good Brothers, as they were called, during that time period, started throwing parties. They'd have rent parties, they'd have black eyed peas, Coke. You'd come to a party, pay a little fee, dance all night. People used to come from miles around to go to the Good Brothers parties, I should say. Another thing is when they socialized, they went to Stanford, they went to San Francisco State, because there were so few black students. They would all get together so they could have, parties. There weren't very many black students. So it's always interesting to me when I talk to different people about their experiences at San Jose State, even though they were teammates with, the black student athletes, they didn't socialize together. So a lot of others who I talked to about the experience of the black athletes didn't realize, that they had any problems. They thought everything was fine and dandy, things must have been moving up. Here they are in college, but they didn't really think too much about it. So some of the stories that I tell them that the athletes tell me, actually, they find surprising. Once I started studying San Jose State, I finished a second degree in African American Studies. I went to San Francisco State and started a master's program. And I recently returned from Maryland, where I had started a doctoral program. Once I was contacted by Alita Bray in History San Jose, my research started to change. At first, I had only looked at the black experience, and I looked at the history of Speed City, which was, the nickname actually came from a San Jose Mercury News sports writer, and I'm still trying to narrow that down. But a lot of the youngsters at the Mercury News now are totally not aware of, what it was. So it's going to take a little bit more research on my part. But when I went to my first meeting at History San Jose and I looked on this big white board, Alita Bray had taken my thesis and chopped it up. Everything was fine, but then there was this empty space in introduction, and then I just thought, oh, I know, I always wanted to talk to Coach Uchida and Coach Menendez. So that's how I got connected with Coach Uchida and Coach Menendez. Unfortunately, Coach Menendez isn't able to communicate. He's in a rest home. But his family has shared a lot of great memories with me. For one thing, he and Coach Uchida were both in World War II. Unlike the black and Japanese American soldiers, the Hispanic soldiers were able to go out and do different things during World War II, as were the Japanese troops and the black troops were segregated. So Coach Menendez actually wanted to be a pilot. Unfortunately, somebody in his group was killed, so they then took all of the people in his group and they put them in different places around the country. Because Coach Menendez had been a fighter, and a Golden Glover, in fact, he was placed down in North Carolina, where it just so happened that the boxing coach from San Jose State, DeWitt Portell, was there. DeWitt Portell had known of Coach Menendez's reputation and brought him back to San Jose State. I'm going to go into Coach Menendez's story because he isn't here to tell it, but then I'll let you, Coach Uchida, tell his story, and Ben Tucker tell his story, but I'll tell Coach Menendez's story first. It is a very interesting story. His parents were from Spain. He grew up in East St. Louis, and he started boxing to stay out of trouble. He became a Golden Glover. When he came to San Jose State, his son told me that his English was so bad, people belittled Coach Portell for bringing him to San Jose State. So not only did Coach Menendez major in English, he graduated magna cum laude, went to Stanford and got his teaching credential, and then moved south to start teaching high school. That's where he met his wife, and his wife still lives in Morgan Hill, and she has blessed me with a lot of fantastic things, such as the film of Muhammad Ali making the 1960 Olympic boxing team, of which Coach Menendez was the Olympic coach. He was also the coach of the 1976 Olympic soccer team, and nobody knows anything about that. He's the only man to have ever coached 2 sports at the Olympic level, and that is like amazing, fantastic story for someone who barely spoke English when he came, out of East St. Louis. And then he came to San Jose State. So the things that were working against him actually worked for him in a sense, because he went on to do all these great things. He was even more determined to create the right circumstances for himself. So Coach Menendez does have a fantastic story. Another interesting thing about him, and I wish he could tell us all of it, but his wife and his son have shared some things with me. He coached the 1960 Olympic boxing team, so his wife gave me like 300 slides of all these different people at the 1960 Olympic Games, including Jesse Owens. Muhammad Ali happened to be on that team, and Coach Menendez, because he didn't think that Muhammad Ali was going to win as a heavyweight, he put him down a class because he didn't think he was going to be able to compete with the Italian boxer. So who knows really what could have happened to Muhammad Ali had he, went to the Olympics and lost. Coach Menendez took care of that. He dropped him a weight class. And then we know, how else he went on to do all these wonderful things. Another thing that people don't know is Muhammad Ali trained in 1960 at San Jose State. Nobody talks about that. But Muhammad Ali spent time at San Jose State training for the 1960 Olympic Games. So Coach Menendez has a great, wonderful story, and our exhibit that's opening in January, you'll be able to see a lot of the pictures that his family presented the museum. I think I've said everything I should say. I'm going to give Coach Uchida and Ben Tucker a turn.
I wish I had a history like Julie Menendez. She had a great history. When I was in elementary school, I remember we had classes in history, and they talked about the Civil War. And I used to think, Civil War? My God, that's 70 years ago. Today, I came to San Jose State in 1940, and now 2006, This is 66 years ago. So some of the things that took place from 1940, I'll try to tell a little bit about it. I came here in 1940, and I was very, I don't know if I could call it fortunate. The judo coach at that time, named Mel Bruno, went he volunteered for the Gene Tooney physical fitness program. And if any of you know that, it was Gene Tooney was a world boxing champion. And so he went into that. And so he said, Yosha, you had judo. Why don't you finish this course for me? So I took this course over. And at that time, there was Tiny Hartranft was the director of physical education and athletics. And he says, well, you know a little bit about judo. And I said, I'm not as much as Mel Bruno, but I'll certainly try building this. And he said, well, these are police students, and you have to teach them some self-defense. I said, well, whatever self-defense I know, I'll try to teach. So this is how I started judo at San Jose State. And then 1940, end of December 1941, the war started. And February 1942, I was inducted into service, and I was discharged in December of 1945, and I immediately went to San Jose State to finish up my schooling. And at that time, the director of police school at that time was Wilbur Schmidt, and Tiny Hutton. So he said, well, I hear you were teaching judo before I came here. He said, well, I did try. He said, well, would you like to continue? I said, sure. So I was one of the first part-time Asian that was hired on the campus. And I was very fortunate that I had been there a little bit earlier, so they took me on. And we started teaching judo to the police students. The police students at that time, their minimum requirement was 5 feet 9, 165 pounds. And I was 130 pounds and 5 feet 2. So I had one day the Marine came up to me, and I mean, former Marine. He came up to me and says, look, he says, Japs like you, I used to practice bayonet on at Guadalcanal. I said, well, I'm sorry, but I also was in the military too. He said, well, I don't care. I said, well, this is what I'm going to tell you. We're going to the hell out of you. I said, okay, well, so I'm the instructor, so I have to, you have to do what I tell you. He says, no, I don't have to. I said, how can a squirt like you teach me judo? I said, well, that's what I'm here for. So he said, well, look, what am I going to do? What are you going to do when I pick you up and swing you around and throw you? And I said, well, I don't know. So this fellow was about 250 pounds. He was the captain of the San Jose State football team, and he was very strong. So he picked me up, and he started to swing me around. And before long, I was horizontal to the floor. And however, there's one thing he didn't know that I knew. In judo, the idea is to unbalance your opponent, and when your opponent is unbalanced, you maintain your balance and throw him. Well, I knew that eventually he would have to let me down. So he kept swinging me around, and he was rolling me around. And here I have 30 students all standing around watching to see what's going to happen. And when he let me down, I knew he was off balance, so I threw him very hard, slammed him right on the mat. And he was just gasping for breath. And that was the start of my career in judo. Then later on, our students, classes that followed, students would come up to me and says, Coach, I was at the Civic Auditorium and watching this exhibition or match between a judo guy and a boxer, and the judo guy, you know what happened to him, he got smashed. And then next day somebody will come and says, you know, Coach, I don't know why we take this course, because there's a guy that took wrestling, just threw this guy in judo and slammed him. I said, that's not judo, but this guy is not a real judo person. He said, well, I don't know what he did, but he sure slammed him. Well, he said, this is an exhibition. But he said, well, you look good to me. So I had this friend at the University of California named Henry Stone. He was the chairman of the physical education and also the wrestling coach of the Bears. And he also served as the NCAA on the NCAA wrestling board. So I went to see him and I said, Henry, how can you stop all these exhibitions that's going on? Just beating the judo down. And he said, well, there's nothing you could do about this. I says, why not? He says, because judo is not a sport. He said, what do you mean that judo is not a sport? Judo is a sport, and we practice judo as a sport. He says, regardless what you say, it's not a sport. It's a martial arts. And the only way judo is going to become a sport is when it's recognized by the AAU as a sport. The AAU, as many of you might know, is called the Amateur Athletic Union, and the Amateur Athletic Union at that time was the powerful sports organization of the United States. And whatever the AAU said, that was it. If the AAU said you were a professional, even if you got a gas money going someplace, that's it. You were a professional. So they were very powerful. And I know the NCAA tried to break up the AAU for many years, and they even got General MacArthur to mediate. They got Bobby Kennedy to mediate, and nothing would happen. The AAU would not budge, and they were the rulers. And the way they ruled was because from the AAU, you went to the USOC. You became a board member of the USOC. You had to be from the AAU in order to get on the board. And they would put on some token AAU, token NCAA people on the board, but that was it. They had no power. If you went to the Olympics, you had to be a member of the AAU to participate. So this is how powerful it was. Anyway, they said, Henry Stone said, you have to get the AAU to recognize judo as a sport. And that's the only way you can eliminate all these exhibitions. So we went out and we started to get people to help judo become a sport. Well, we had a lot of resistance because many people did not believe that that was the way to practice judo. So they said, well, we're not going to support you. However, one advantage we had at San Jose State was all the students were very big and powerful. So when we went to local tournaments, we were able to beat everybody because even though they had very little time in judo, they were able to beat many black belts. So consequently, we were able to change their thinking, and we started a weight system at San Jose, and then we practiced this weight system throughout Northern California. Southern California judo people opposed it, but we managed to get the Northern California people to cooperate and started a weight system, 130, 150, 180, and heavyweights. The 130, 150 has been dropped to 145. The 180 still, 180 has been changed to 178 pounds, and so on. And the heavyweight has been changed. However, the standard that we set is still used not only internationally, but it's used in the Olympics. So this all started at San Jose State, and we were able to practice with the students at this weight level. Now, one of the reasons why I pushed for the weight system was because there was a big difference in the height, weight, and a small person that might have a little bit of knowledge. The person that had the weight and strength always beat the smaller person because they didn't have the weight in the technique to unbalance them. However, today the weight system is all accepted. In 1964, we were able to go to Tokyo, and two of the four members of the team, two of them were from San Jose State, and I was the coach. And after that, we had many people that became coaches that were graduates of San Jose State and managers. And in 1984, the first silver medalist in the Olympic came from San Jose State, a student named Bobby Berlin from Chicago. And in 1987, Mike Swain won the world champion, first gold medalist in the world Judo championship. And 1988, we had a lightweight from Hawaii that won the division. So, and then in the world championships and university championships, many of our students we have been very fortunate in winning. In 1962, we started the NCAA, not NCAA, but the National Collegiate Judo Association. We couldn't break into the NCAA, but we said we better start the National Collegiate Championship. And the way this got started was Bob Bronson was the athletic director at that time, and he was on the NCAA board. And he came back and he says, Yosh, either you participate with colleges, or and if you participate in the AAU championships, we're going to take the budget away. Of course, the budget at that time was something like $700, $800. They really, but it was the idea that he was going to take the budget away. He said, okay, we'll do something. So we formed the National Collegiate Judo Association in 1962 at Colorado Springs. And we started from there, and we've had 45th championships. And of the 45, out of the 45, we have won 42 championships. So we more or less have dominated the judo collegiates, and also internationally, our students are all up there in the elite category. It's now one of the things that's very impressive about our students. They are we don't get any scholarships. Many of them have a part-time job. They carry a minimum of 12 years to be full-time students, and they maintain at least minimum of I say you have to maintain at least 2.5 or better if you want to participate. And they all maintain close to 3 point or better. And each year somebody gets honored by winning a scholarship, or makes the dean's list or the president's list. So we are very proud of their accomplishments. And one of the things that we have always stressed is they come to San Jose State with the idea that, I can go to San Jose State to be in judo, make the judo team. The first thing I told them is, look, you came to San Jose State to do judo, but if you can't stay in school, you're out. So it's your choice. You either study and maintain the grade and graduate, or you're not a member of our team. So they all graduate, and they all do very well after they graduate. So we're real proud of their accomplishments, and we hope to continue. Like I said, I've been there 66 years, and I told Dean Edwards not too long ago that I think I've been here too long, and she says, "Oh no, we have your building named after you, and we're going to fix that old pool down there so that we can use that for just judo." And I said, "Well, I guess I'll stick around there." Thank you.
They're actually, because I talked to Coach Uchida, it's interesting because somebody I used to babysit said, whenever I see Coach Uchida, he just sits at, it's a sushi bar, I think, and she said, he never says anything. And I said to her, well, every time I go to his office, I stick a quarter in the meter for 15 minutes, and then I come out 2 hours later and have a ticket on my car. But I have a couple of stories that I would like him to share. The first one is about working in the strawberry patch. Do you remember telling me that? I want you to share that one.
Well, after I graduated from high school, I stayed home, and I was working on the farm, and I was working in a strawberry patch. And I don't think any of you ever picked strawberry, but you get on your knees and you crawl through the trenches here, and you pick berries. Early in the morning, whenever you pick berries, there's a dew on the leaves, and there's mosquitoes there, and you pick it and you put it on, and the mosquitoes fly out and they bite you and everything else, and it's your body gets wet, and you hit about 10:30. The sun beats down on you, and your knee hurts, and you still crawl and try to pick the berries. And so I was about 19 then. I thought, if I live to be 50, I said, I got about 30 more years on this thing, and I can't be crawling through these tracks. I gotta go to school. And so that's how I entered San Jose State. I applied, and they accepted me, and I said, well, San Jose State's a small school, and that'd be a nice place to go. And so that's how I came to this.
One more thing. When he came to San Jose State, he was majoring in engineering, but why don't you talk about your World War II experience and what led you to change your degree? And then I worked for Coach Uchida, and I didn't even realize that.
Well, I was a chemical engineer in 1941, and I remember Dr. Bowers. He was my chemistry teacher, quantitative chemistry teacher. He called me in and he says, Mr. Uchida, I see you are a chemical engineer major. I said, yes, I am. He said, what are you planning to do with it? Well, I hope I graduate and become a chemical engineer and go into oil fields or someplace. And where do you think you're going to get a job? Oh, maybe Standard or Shell. And he shook his head. He says, you'll never get a job. Well, why not? He says, look at you. You're a Japanese. Nobody's going to hire you. She said, I said, well, I guess I don't know. I was just stunned. And so then in the meantime, I got drafted. I went into service, and in the medics, not medics, but I was in the service, and as a as I was being transferred from camp to camp all over, I got a personnel officer look through my qualifications, and he said, "What have you been doing?" I said, "Well, I've been washing the theaters out. I've been working at service clubs as a busboy." And he said, "Well, you have lots of chemistry." I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, would you like to go into the into the laboratory?" I said, "Oh, that'd be great." So I was very fortunate. I got transferred to a medical laboratory. And I didn't know anything about laboratory work, but they said, "Well, there's a bunch of test tubes you can wash, you can do." And so I got started out, and so one day I asked the pathologist, I said, "Is there an opportunity for me to go to medical technology school?" And he says, "No." But there was a couple of lieutenants sitting there, and they heard me. So they pulled me to the side and says, "Look, Yosh, we'll help you. So after you wash the dishes and get and the pipettes and everything, you get everything cleaned up, come in and see us." So it was a professor from Stanford University and a professor from Duke University. Both were first lieutenants, so they were very young. And so every afternoon, whenever I had time, they would sit there and drill me on the theory of immunology and all these things that I had no idea about. And they would show me why, of course, when you say today, all these syphilis tests and things like that, they had tests called Wasserman, and it took a long time to do it, and it was very difficult to do. But he says they drilled me on the theory. So I got a better education probably than anybody else did. And so after I came back to San Jose State, and I finished up in biological science. And the worst part of the thing was after I got graduated, I started looking for a job, and nobody would hire me. And I said, "Why?" And he said, I spent 4 years in the Army, and I spent many months working with the soldiers from the South Pacific, the European theater. I drew blood. I did all these things from them. I had no problems. He said, "Well, that was because you were in the Army. Well, you're now in the civilian life, and that's a different story." So it was a very devastating moment, but fortunately, I don't know if you know a fellow named Sam Delamagiori or not. He used to be a supervisor for the county, and he's a good friend of mine. And I told him I couldn't get a job, and so he went to see a Dr. Calcanio, who was a resident at O'Connor Hospital. And then Dr. Calcanio, in turn, introduced me, talked to Sister Bernice, who was the head of the O'Connor's Hospital, and they talked to the pathologist. And the pathologist said, "Yeah, well, you can come in and you could help us." So that's how I started my medical laboratory career, and the job paid $100 a month, and I worked from 7 in the night to 7 in the morning, and on Saturdays from 12 to 12 Sunday. So it was a job, but I learned much from it. It was a great experience for me, because from there I was able to the doctors that I had an opportunity to start my own medical laboratory. So I bought, this lady had a laboratory that was grossing about $700 and it was costing her $800 to operate. So she said she's losing $100 a month. Would I buy it? I said, oh, okay, fine. So she said, you can have it for $75 down and $75 a month until paid in full. I said, oh, fine. But because I had worked at O'Connor's Hospital and met many of the doctors, and many times at night you meet, they have nothing else to do but come down, sit down, and talk with you to kill time. So many of them would say, Yosh, would you wanna? I'm going to do some surgery up there. You want to come and watch? So I said, sure. So I got to know these doctors pretty well. So when I started my business and I visited them, they all were very helpful, and so I was able to. The first month, this laboratory, the maximum it did was about $700. The first month I took over, we did $1,500, and the next month it went to $3,000. And so from there on, I was able to build a laboratory. But at the same time, I still kept up with my judo at San Jose State because I thought this was a good way to keep the public relations and also to teach many of the people who had no experience with the Japanese. Like one of the students came up to me and says, Coach, I have to drop judo. I said, why? He said, my mother told me I have to drop judo. I said, well, why? He said, because my mother says I should not take a class from any Japs. I said, well, I'm not doing anything that you don't like. He said, oh, I like judo. He said, well, stick around. Fortunately, he stuck around and graduated, and today he's one of our great boosters. He always, almost I'd say every year he sends me $500 for the judo team. So.
Actually, I worked for Coach Uchida when I graduated from San Jose State. I had left to do a couple of internships, and then I came back to California looking for a job. My cousin got me a job at his lab as a driver, so I used to get up early on Sundays, drive to Modesto and Tracy, and then come back missing my football games during the season. But the interesting thing was my cousin would always say, oh, Coach Uchida, or Mr. Uchida, she would just tell me all this stuff, and I was terrified. And one time I finally saw him, and we both stood at attention. We were like terrified of him. So that's why it's like when I first started talking to him, I'm like, oh my God, what? He's so nice and open. I just still can't believe that's Coach Uchida. Okay, I'm going to give the microphone to Mr. Tucker.
You know, thank you. Before I speak, I really want to have Coach share one story. Just one more story that he shared with me and my friend today, and that's about his illustrious high school football career and a special play they put in just for him. Give us the short version, Coach.
Since I was 5'2" and I only weighed about 125 pounds, they had one great play for me, and that was called Yosh X. And whenever the team needed 1 yard, I would get behind the center, and they would give me the ball, and I would lunge forward, and I would make the one. The center would go, and I would make the 1 yard, and so we'd get our first down. One time we were playing Laguna High School, and I was behind him, and we were, I think, around the 20-yard line, and the coach said, let's go in there, get that 1 yard. So I go in there, and every time I got the ball and I hit, I always hit the center, and I only made 1 yard. But this time I got the ball, and the center managed to go through. There's nobody for him to hit, so consequently he went through. So here I am following him, and I look out there, and there I see the Pacific Ocean. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a touchdown. And so I start to run, I tripped, I fell forward, the ball popped out, and that was the end of my football.
That was quite a story. It is really a pleasure to be here with Coach Yoshida, because when I came to San Jose State as a freshman, he was already a living legend. And he was already, to me, a 17-year-old kid, an old man. And then I come and look at him today, and it seems like I'm catching up with him, and he's standing still. But I really want to thank San Jose History Museum and Urla Hill for all the work that they're doing, archiving this valuable information. It is valuable because San Jose was indeed, for me, a really, really learning experience in more ways than one. I learned so much both on the track, off the track, in class, outside of class, and with a lot of the young, older men now who I went to school with back in the day. But I kind of hear a theme here this afternoon, this evening, and it's about overcoming adversity, knocking down barriers, and overcoming. And I want to kind of keep on that theme and talk to you about how a young black man from San Francisco Bayview Hunters Point became a distance runner. Very, very unlikely kind of outcome. And the way I got on that path to running long distance was through adversity. And I went to Polytechnic High School, a well-known high school for its athletic program. And I went out for the basketball team because that's what most urban black boys did. And what happened to me one day was just devastating. The coach came up to me and said, "Ben, give me your uniform. You're cut from the team." I said, oh my God. I mean, it was like a ton of bricks had hit me. And I just didn't know what to do. And then he could see the look in my face. And he said, "However, I'm going to give you a referral. I want you to go see the cross-country coach." I said, "Cross country? What is that?" A city kid, cross country. And my high school, Polytechnic High School, was right across the street from Kezar Stadium. And part of our training was to run around Kezar Stadium, and I would literally lap the rest of the team in my running. And Coach Jim Witt, who was one of the finest basketball coaches in the city at the time, saw that I was not a basketball player and that I was a long distance runner. And he had the insight to refer me to Coach Walt Lester and say, "Go out for cross country." I had no idea what cross country was. I just knew I wanted to win a block P. I wanted to be a letterman. I wanted to be a big man on campus. I said, Coach Witt thinks I can do it. Hey, I'm going to go on down there and give it a shot. And my high school was directly across the street from the Golden Gate Park. And this was like, what do we do in cross country? We run through the park. We run over hills, we run through dales, we run out to the beach. And it was one of the most liberating experiences I'd ever had in my entire 15 years. Now, I grew up in a family of 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls in the projects. Never had one moment of privacy. Slept in the same bed for the first 8 or 9 years with my 2 brothers, one of which wet the bed every single night. It was rough. It was rough. We finally moved to a home in Bayview Hunters Point, which we still have, which my mom still has. And we got a little bit of privacy, but still not a whole lot of privacy. And on those long runs to Stowe Lake, through Golden Gate Park, the polo fields, up and down the beach, the Great Highway. That was my sense of solitude, reverie, and my individual sort of interpersonal. It was the first time I became introspective. And I loved it. And I developed a passion for it. And out of that passion, I became pretty darn good. I won the cross-country championship that year. I got my Letterman's jacket, my block. Basketball team did not win the championship that year. I think it had something to do with the fact that the coach cut me. But I became a big man on campus. I went on to win the high school state meet in track and field. Our cross-country team, really did well. It was the first year they had the first national high school track meet, and I went on and I became the national high school champion. And so then the recruiting wars, thank you. Then the recruiting wars came about, and I didn't have the grades to go to Stanford and Cal right from Jump Street. I said, go to community college, go to city college, but I wanted to get away from home. I wanted my own bed, a little bit of freedom. So Coach Bud Winters comes calling. And any of you remember Bud? Bud was a psychologist, a shaman, snake oil salesman, but he was also a very, very good sprint coach. So he would bring me down, introduce us around, met the fellas, Chuck Alexander in the back there. He had the Good Brothers. I met some of the athletes, and I saw that there was a social network there for African American athletes. And I made a decision to come to Speed City as a distance runner. And all of my friends said, why are you going to Speed City, man? You're not a sprinter. Why don't you go to Oregon? Go to Stanford, go to UCLA. I said, no, I'm going to go where I think that I can get a decent kind of coaching and running experience, but I want to be in a network, a social network. And it was very, very wise move on my part, because everyone told me, your running career is over, you're making the wrong choice, Bud doesn't know, what about long distance running. So I came to San Jose. I became a Spartan. And little did I know I was going to lead a Spartan existence. I got on the Greyhound bus, my little bags. I showed up at the bus station, and there was no one there to meet me. And here I am, the national champ, state champ, and then I hear a page. Ben Tucker, would you please go that? I said, oh, the car must be waiting outside. Here's a note from Bud Winters. The campus is 7 blocks up. My office is on the left on 7th Street. See you there. I said, oh boy, what a welcome. And so I chug it on up, hot day and the whole bit. And I get to San Jose and I meet my teammates. And these are guys who I am still deeply, deeply involved in. And it's been one of the most, exciting experiences of my life. So when I came to San Jose as a freshman, of course, Ray Norton was the big thing then. He was just back from the Rome Olympics, and we heard all his reasons why he didn't get that gold medal. Okay. And cross-country season started. And we had a new coach who'd come from, I think it was somewhere down your way, Marina Del Rey or Redondo Beach, by the name of Dean Miller. And he had coached a young man by the name of Danny Murphy. Miracosta. Okay, Danny Murphy. This is Dr. George Reich up front. He's our statistician. He knows everything you want to know about track and field. He will keep me honest here. And so Dean was also from Ohio. And Dean was a very, very good coach. We didn't know. So we had on our team, and here's the real irony of it. In high school, I was the only African American on the team, oftentimes the only ones in the meets, And you know these meets in cross country, you can have hundreds of athletes. And I was it. Came to San Jose State. 2 of my teammates were African American. Horace Whitehead, who transferred in from East Los Angeles Community College. Ron Davis from Hardy High in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And we had a Brazilian brother who looked just like us, Jose Azevedo. And that team went back to East Lansing, Michigan. After training in the roads, in the hills of San Jose, we went back to East Lansing, Michigan in 1961, and we were runners-up to Villanova, number 2. Now, this is very significant because the West Coast teams really did not have a reputation for being strong cross-country teams, okay? So we were really wired up, we were really amped. A couple of the guys didn't run as well because it was so cold back in Lansing, Michigan in November, the week before Thanksgiving. We were not prepared. I mean, we came out there with our singlets and our shorts, and these East Coast guys had on the hats and gloves and tights, you know. And Dean Miller said, don't worry about it, Tagger. He called us all Tagger. Here, we'll get a little, what do you have, some Tagger balm and rubbed on our legs. And some of the guys just broke down in the cold weather. I mean, I think we could have won the championship. So the next year, we come back, 62, same team. We come back, we go, we clean everyone's clock. We come back and we bring back the first NC2A championship in cross country in the history of the West Coast. Now, George, you may have to check me on that one. And it was amazing. And when we came back to school, I mean, we had to really fight the student body to get the money to send us back. I mean, we really had to fight. And so when we came back with the championship, I mean, I have a letter here right now saying, oh, money well spent. You know, if you guys want to go next year, you feel the team, we're gonna do it. And I remember I had a class, an econ class, a very, very tough class, big class about this size. And I really realized the significance of the victory when the professor, who was a very intimidating man, stood up and said, we have in our midst a champion, folks. And I said, oh, he must be talking about some economic theory here. And I want him to stand up and talk to us about what it was like being part of a winning championship team. And he was talking about me. And that was one of the most proudest moments of my life. And I stood up there and I lectured for 45 minutes to an econ class about what it was like running a cross-country meet. And one of the things that they really taught us, Coach Dean Miller taught us, is to run in packs. And if any of you have ever run cross country, there are about 8, 10 guys on a team, and you kind of pair up in terms of who can run what pace. And you want to make sure that, you know, you are running with the guy. And we would run against Stanford oftentimes. And I had another buddy from the high school days by the name of Harry McCalla. Harry McCalla and I were the only 2 distance runners in high school in California at the time. He went to Berkeley High, I went to Polytechnic High in San Francisco. Arch rivals. He'd win one week, I'd win the next week. He went to Stanford, I came to San Jose State, and so I would always key on Harry just out of, you know, that old competition. And so whenever I would see Harry, I'd come up next to him, I'd give him a look, and then I'd do a surge. And when I moved in and passed Harry, 4 or 5 of my teammates went with him. And at the end of the meet, he would say, damn, Tuck, I don't mind you passing me, but do you have to bring the whole damn pack with you? And that was really the secret of how we trained and how we ran. Now, in 1963, my 2 teammates, Horace Whitehead and Ron Davis, they left. Jeff Fishback came back. But 63, those of you who were around that time, very, very tough year. A lot of things went down. JFK was killed. 4 little girls in Birmingham were blown to smithereens. And thanks to people like Chuck Alexander, we had a social network where we sat around and we talked about these things and what they meant and how they impacted our lives and what could we as student athletes do about it now and in the future. And these things weighed heavily on us because we were young African American men, isolated, forced to live together, but out of that forced living condition, we bonded and we really had some strong kinds of motivations to go forward. So we won the Northern California Championship. JFK was killed in November. 4 little girls were killed sometime right around that same time, before or after. But one of the things that kept us focused and we knew that we had to do was we had to perform. We had to perform on the track, in cross country, just as Tommy and Lee and John Carlos knew. They had to perform this before they made a statement. And so we were not sure if we were going to be able to go because of all of the tension and the uncertainty. Stanford did not go, but fortunately they sent us back because our plea was, we're defending champs. We want to go back and defend our title. And so the athletic director saw fit, sent us back to Lansing, Michigan, East Lansing, Michigan. We got in there on a Saturday. We went out for a run on the course that Sunday afternoon. We're walking back into the Kellogg Center, and we see all the people huddled around the TV set. And we said, what happened? What happened? What happened? And they told us, someone just killed Jack Ruby. And Jack Ruby had just been arrested for killing JFK. No, was it? No. I got it backwards, George. Help me. Yeah, someone had just killed Oswald, and it was Jack Ruby who killed him. And we were just blown away. So, oh boy, the whole world is just flying off, you know. And Dean Miller was there, and he just grabbed us and said, gentlemen, don't look at that. Doesn't concern you. Go up to your rooms, you know, do your exercises, stretch out, business as usual tomorrow. And it was absolutely incredible how we were able to just, bam, blanket out. He pulled us in. He says, I know it's perilous times. You're going to have to let our leaders take care of this. Student body is invested in you. You're defending champs. Bam, go out there and do your job tomorrow. Needless to say, we didn't sleep a wink that night. But we got up that morning, cold again, but we were better prepared. We had gloves, hats, tights, the whole bit. And we went out, ran the race of our lives. I think I ended up 9th. Jeff Fishback was 4th. Danny Murphy was right up there, 6th or 7th. And we were able to just put all of that stuff out of our minds, focus on our job, and we went forward and won the 2nd championship back-to-back. And so it was a real honor for me to be able to be part of a winning tradition like that in some of the most perilous times our country has ever known. And so we're living in some tough times now. And I think it's really important for those of you who are in touch with students to let them know that as the world turns and seems to whirl out of control, to really, really stay focused. Now there are a couple of things here, a couple of themes I want to hit on, and that is the role of Bud Winter. You know, not only did I run cross country, but I also ran track. So when track season came in, Bud Winters kind of took over from Dean Miller. And Bud was a man who has to really be given credit because he was one of the first coaches that I knew who brought a critical mass of African American students to a Division I school. Now, he did it on a real skimpy budget, and we all had to work. We were all stars in our own rights. But one of the most humbling experiences after walking from the Greyhound bus station to the campus was when Bud told me, well, Ben, you're going to have to hash for your meals. I said, hash? What the heck is hash? Well, I'm going to get you a job at a fraternity or sorority, and after track you can go and wash pots and pans and you can eat. I said, damn, that doesn't sound too cool. And so I ended up my first year, track, going from the track, coming back to a fraternity or sorority, legs just tired, standing up, washing pots and pans and dishes, and then sitting out in the kitchen, and eating. Humbling experience. But you know what? There was a black woman there who was a cook, and I was always grumbling. Sometimes I didn't get the pots too clean, you know, wasn't taking pride in my work. And she pulled me aside and she said, "Come here, boy." That's what she called me. "Come here, boy." She said, "Look, I know you think you're a big shot, you're in college. But look, you like my food?" I said, oh yes, the food is delicious. She says, "You have an opportunity. You see, I want you to clean them pots like you run that track. Okay, and I'm gonna take care of you. And not only that, but I'm gonna pack you a bag for your roommates." And so she really put me on the right track in terms of, you know, you can be a big star, you can get a big head, or you can take advantage of the situation and turn it, that adversity, into opportunity. So Bud would put us to the test. Now every summer, Bud would find a different job. Generally it was working in the cannery, back-breaking work. Or we worked in food machinery. You know, I remember the first year they had the seatbelt laws, and we had to install seatbelts. But we were always working. We were stars, but we were always working. We never had 100% of a scholarship. And the other thing that I want to say about Bud is that Bud was so far ahead of his time. Dean Miller taught us about physiology and about anatomy and about the body being the most wonderful adapting machine if you apply stress up to that level of the breaking point. And then you pull back and you rest and you regenerate. I mean, we got it. But what Bud did for us was he did the psych thing. Now, I'm not sure how many of you realize that Bud Winters was a psychology major, and in the war, what he did was he prepared the bombers, the fighters in the jet planes, to go off and fight in the war zone, many of whom knew that they were going off to a certain death. But Bud was that good of a psychologist to get those young men to relax and go into battle. And he oftentimes told that story. And what he would always tell us about being a Spartan. He said, "Gentlemen, you're a Spartan. Do you know what a Spartan is?" "No, Coach, what's a Spartan?" Says, "I'll tell you what a Spartan was. When a newborn baby came on the scene, they would take a little Spartan baby out in the wilderness and stick it out there all night long, and they'd come back the next morning, and those that were alive were Spartans and those that died were not." "Okay, Coach." Said, "And that's what you're made of. You guys have gone through the crucible. You are Spartans." But Bud would, night before a big track meet, he would gather us all together in a big meeting, put us in a room, and he'd do his hypnosis thing. I mean, some of us really got into it. Some of the guys just took it as an opportunity to take a nap. But he would have us doing things that people are now just catching on to. He would talk to us, the lights were low, and he had us doing, he didn't call it at the time, he had us doing visualization. See yourself running. His thing was always loose jaws, loose hands. Want to see yourself at what point you're going to come around. Make you move, make the attack. And for me and some of the distance runners, it clicked. Some of the sprinters, you know, the race is just all reaction. But Bud implanted the stuff in our heads. Oftentimes we made light of it, but when we got in the heat of competition and the bear was jumping on your back, the first thing you thought of, loose jaws, loose hands, maintain your form. And where did I say I was going to attack last? Oh yeah, up on the third turn coming up. And so After a while, Bud brought in a couple of psychologists. You probably remember these names: Bruce Ogilvy and Tom Tutko. And they would come and work with us as well. So I'm going to tie all this up by saying that San Jose State was a crucible for me. From the day I walked from that Greyhound bus station to the athletic department, met Dean Miller, met Bud Winters, ran into a lot of racism, ran into a lot of adversity, but I also knew that we had a network that we could go back to, the good brothers that started, and commiserate with our brothers. Didn't have too many sisters there on the campus at the time. And they would tell a story that was even worse than yours. And it really, really did make men of us. And because of the things that I learned at San Jose State and the kind of history that I witnessed as an athlete, I dedicated my life to the whole issue of social justice and education and trying to tell athletes it's about being a student athlete and not just an athlete. And I'm really sorry to say that track and field no longer exists at San Jose State, but I did have a chance to go by and look at that beautiful statue of Tommy and John Carlos, and to me that is very, very redeeming. And so San Jose State, as they used to say on Saturday Night Live, has been very, very good to me.
Actually, just because I've been talking to Ben Tucker for like the past 10 years, I have a lot of stories, but the one that is key is your experience with the IRS and your trip to Europe during Vietnam after you were drafted.
The IRS.
You came back to work for them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, tell that story.
Oh,
That's
okay. I thought you'd been talking to my accountant. Yeah, when I was a business major at San Jose State, one of the things my parents says, you're going on scholarship, you're a sports guy, but don't you be no dumb jock. My mom always wanted me to be a school teacher, so I majored in business and got a great education in business, and I was going to go on to be a CPA. And so my first job was with the Franchise Tax Board, not the IRS, the state people. Some of you might know them. I see some nodding of heads. Yeah, those folks. And so I was an auditor. And I went out and I looked to make adjustments on people's income tax, find the cheaters. And so in my first big audit was Gilmore's Soul Food Restaurant, one of my favorites, in the Fillmore district. And Mr. Gilmore was probably about a 70-year-old African-American man, third grade education, longshoreman, but smart as a whip, had accumulated a lot of wealth in terms of real estate, but he had an awful, awful accountant. He was actually a bookkeeper. Kept all his papers in a tobacco jar. And so the short version is I went in and I made an adjustment of like $100,000. This is in the 60s. Lot of money. So we had a big conference. And I'm sitting there, my boss is there, and he said, yeah, way to go, Ben, you're going to be great. And so Mr. Gilmore's sitting there, and we make the adjustment. I said, Mr. Gilmore, any questions? And he says, I've got one question. He zeroes in on me. He said, yeah, you look like a decent young man. Why don't you get yourself a decent job? And it was like... And I really didn't like being an accountant. I'm a people's person. And I never could go back to his restaurant again. Everybody said, hey, let's go to Mr. Gilmore's tonight. Okay. Bring me a takeout. And because of that, I really, I lasted about another month, and I started fishing around. And someone said, you know, we really need some African-American males in education. And my mom said, yeah, go for that. And so I got an education. That's how I became sort of a counselor / school teacher, working for the Berkeley Unified School District, and then 25 years for the University of California. Thanks for bringing that up. Oh, yes, yes. Unlike Coach Yoshida and Menendez, I didn't go to the military. The other thing that was happening in those in the mid-60s was Vietnam broke out. I graduated in 1965, and I applied to graduate school, and they did not grant me an exemption. And I did all kinds of things. I tried to go conscientious objector. I told them I was a communist, a Muslim, you know, I tried it all. They just weren't buying it. They said, we need some bodies. And so what I did was I made the ultimate decision. I, talked to my parents, talked to my friends, people coming back in body bags, I'm dealing with the civil rights issues and issues over here, and I'm trying to go, they want to send me to Vietnam. So what I did was I fled the country and became a draft dodger/evader. And traveled around Europe for 2 years and got homesick and came back, faced the music, did the whole court thing, and I beat them and finally got the conscientious objector status that I should have, but it cost me several $1,000s. And I had a brother who was the patriot, and he went on to the war, and he's not the same person that he was before he went to the war. So it all balanced out in the end, I guess.
I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, probably as a Spartan or two, a past Spartan, or somebody just curious. Now is the time for your questions, your comments, whatever you'd like to say to our panelists, or about our panelists, or for our panelists, and just feel free to raise your hands. We'll call on you and hear what you have to say. Yes.
I remember D. Poitel was, of course, the coach of the boxing team, and during World War II, they had a meet with Fleet City, one of the veterans, one of the Army or Navy groups, another boxing team, whose coach was Max Baer. D. Poitel was a little guy, not too big. But Max challenged him to a boxing match. Well, Max was, huge heavyweight. And he thought he was really going to beat him up, but of course he did. He was really scared before the bout. But remember, this is at the Civic Auditorium, and they came out, and Max picked him up and carried him around the ring a couple of times, and so it ended very nicely. But that's one thing I remember about D. Poitel, a great boxing coach. Remember Julie Menendez boxing professionally a little bit after when he was at San Jose State too, as well as coaching.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Weimer, I was going to say something. For the younger generation that might be here, Max Baer's son is Jethro Bodine from Beverly Hillbillies. I like little knick-knack names. And Jethro Bodine also boxed at the University of Santa Clara, for those of you who didn't know that.
And if you just saw the movie Cinderella Man, you remember seeing the depiction of Max Baer and John J. Braddock and James J. Braddock. I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.
I'll pass you the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I had the great fortune of taking speech class with Julie Menendez, and I was scared out of my wits to see how am I going to relate to these people. Well, he said, you have some kind of a hobby or some kind of an existence that'll help you through it. Watch me. His first speech, he showed the class how to do card tricks. And how did he learn how to do card tricks? She knows. He said, when I was in Chicago waiting for a boxing match, I had to do something to keep myself from going crazy. I learned how to do card tricks. I never learned how to do card tricks, but I got the idea from him. Do something to give a speech, but get your mind off of the fright of the people, and that was it. Second point, and it's a question. Is Julia Menendez able to have visitors?
Yes, and he's in Morgan Cove.
Thank you. I'll
Yeah.
follow it up. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Just a question regarding the Tommy Smith, John Carlos era. How big an influence did Harry Edwards play in what went down during the Olympics?
I wasn't around during that period, Urla. In the
Actually,
audience.
Harry Edwards' assistant, I'm forgetting your name.
Ken Noel.
Ken Noel. Ken Noel was Harry Edwards' assistant during that time. He happens to be sitting in the front row. Would you like to say something about that? I can say a little bit about it. For one thing, I'm sure that there are some people in the audience who might be familiar with Dick Gregory, the comedian. Dick Gregory spent a lot of time at San Jose State on fellowship, and a lot of people don't realize that. Dick Gregory also tried to get the athletes to boycott in 1964, but unfortunately they wouldn't go through with it. Harry Edwards picked up on that for 1968. In the fall of 1968, when Harry Edwards returned from Cornell, he got the black students involved in a protest movement, and basically it was to help them gain more advantages on campus because things were, the conditions on campus for the black students were still so bad. So he took that idea, and then that steamrolled into the black athletic protest movement. Ken Noel ran cross country? No.
He'll tell you.
Okay, he'll tell us. Here he is.
Well, I'm not really sure about the question. I think we all understand that Harry played a big role in that period. But if you want to know, was he the sole force behind it? I would say no. Of course, he was important. He had his role. We all had our roles in it. His role was to publicize things, to keep things in the news, to get the attention on what we were trying to do. That was his role, and of course, he fit that role very, very well. And most of the rest of us worked pretty much behind the scenes. So maybe people have the impression that it was all Harry, but it wasn't all Harry. It was let's say, more or less a team thing. Carlos and Smith, of course, are their own men, and they were at that time too. So let's not think that it's just Harry. We were all very deeply committed to the cause that we pursued. We put a lot of thought into what we did. We put a lot of planning into it, and I think that we were very, very successful at it. So that's what you will know. That's it.
Well, it certainly was successful. It opened a lot of eyes, thank goodness, and I can recall being
a lot of doors. Too.
And doors. You're right. When I was a student in the middle 50s, I mean, we were naive with a capital N. You know, if you're a white kid and a white student there, you had no idea what was going on with the other students. You know, we had no idea there was a race problem in San Jose. Well, maybe in the South we'd heard something about that, but here, on the San Jose State campus, people weren't being treated the same. I had no idea that when Yosh came back from the war, he couldn't get a job. You know, that's ridiculous. But fortunately, I hope we're past that, or getting past it. Still working at it, but that's because of the effort of the people who were in the struggle and still are in the struggle. And thank goodness you guys were doing it. Other questions?
Is Dr. Edwards still aligned with the 49ers? I know he used to be on the sidelines all the time. And I have not seen him there since the York group took over.
Right. When I saw him speak last summer, he said he's there less than 2 days a week, and he used to put on seminars for the young athletes who were coming in, and he said he hadn't done that in like 2 to 3 years. So he's still there, but very limited. His wife is also ill, so that's another thing that kind of takes away from his, time working with the Niners.
But was he not on the payroll with them?
Yes, for, God, you know what? Maybe
years.
Close to 20 years. Yeah.
So does he go there on his own now, or is he still somewhat on the payroll?
I believe he's still on the payroll, but he said he's there less than 2 days a week, so he's not there very often.
Now, one other question regarding the track team. Frank Slayton?
Yeah, he just moved to Auburn.
Okay. Wasn't he an alternate on that relay team?
He was an alternate. You know what? He was on a relay team, and you know what? I don't know which one he was on.
And if I remember,
not for the Olympics, right? Not for the Olympics. He was just for San Jose State,
oh, for state.
Right? Because he was on the football team, and what was his record for the football team? I think he was a run. You know what? I can't remember. He had a national record while playing on the football team, and I just saw George Carty. Where is he? Do you know what Coach Slayton's record was? He held a national record. I can't think of what the record was.
He taught here in San Jose, if I remember.
He still does. He teaches at Evergreen High School. He and his wife, because he's retiring next year, they bought a house in Auburn, so they're up there this summer fixing it up.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm the historian they've been talking about. I'm Chuck Alexander. And I just wanted to let you know that part of our mission, I came up here on a football scholarship I was a junior transfer, I came as a junior. So I too came from the bus station with my trunk. Coach Bronson, I sat in here, so he went and got me. They hadn't sent me my papers, so he went and got me included. But part of the thing, we couldn't find housing, so he had to look around for housing. So I said, hey, this is like Mississippi. I was from Los Angeles. I said, what's going on here? So he was able to get us some housing. I said, something's wrong here. We got to do better. So we worked quite hard on making sure, but our focus that a lot of people didn't understand was to get a degree. We were the ones who our parents had worked hard for so we could come up to school. And athletics was an avenue to get that degree. But when Jim was talking about, that was our focus at the house. We all talked about, we had study hall at the house, so we would get that degree. And out of that house, I think we had about 30 guys that stayed there. And when I was doing the tally, we had judges, doctors, lawyers, administrators. All those 30 guys, the majority of us ended up being successful. But during those days, we came over the adversity by working through some things. But when we talk about the Harry protest, we had started it earlier, but our focus was to hit them from all sides. And our focus was the intellectual side. If we couldn't get a good grade in class, it was moot question. So it's a matter of we worked hard to get those grades and to bring a lot of other athletes along.
With all the history that track has at San Jose State, hasn't there been any pressure put on the school to reinstitute track as a sport at San Jose State?
Do I sense a movement beginning here this evening?
It seems a shame.
It is a shame. It was a shame to see Budwinter Field in the condition it's in. It's a shame to see the track disappear that way. Unfortunately, track as a sport overall has been suffering from lack of attendance, from lack of participation. Not everybody is still doing it.
Even the general went away.
That doesn't mean that San Jose State couldn't do it with good support. I mean, but as we've seen tonight, if there is one or two people with determination, they can make things happen. You can change stuff. So if any of you are so motivated to try to bring Speed City back, I'd love to see you do that. I'll do whatever I can to help you.
Mr. Alexander is one of the photographers who we, have introduced, and he's talked. There's another person in the back, Gary Kelmanson, and it's like a small world because I had called San Jose State's library one day, and I found a book that I wanted to check out. And the special collections was closed, so I didn't get to take a look at it. So I said, "Who wrote the book?" And she said, "Gary Kelmanson." So I did a search for Gary Kelmanson. It's the beauty of the internet. Small world, because I found him. He had a website. I gave Mr. Kelmanson a call. He had recently returned to San Jose from, I believe, the Santa Cruz Mountains. Bud Winter got him into San Jose State, and he never even applied. That was a neat story he told me. He came from New Jersey, but he also gave me some great, fantastic photos of San Jose State's. You came in 1969, was it? Yeah, he came in 1969. He gave me some great photos that nobody's ever seen from 1969, and he also gave me a book. One year he kept records of all the track team, how they trained, and he put it together in a book. And if you all remember the copy machines that you had to turn, and it was the purple ink, and you can barely read it, then you can. He gave me his original copy of that. I was freaking out. I couldn't believe that he still had it. He gave me a jersey. He had held on to some stuff. Now I got to think back because he gave me that a couple years ago. I got to go look. But the book I look at almost every day because it's sitting there on the shelf in the collection area. So he's actually another person who's held on to San Jose State history, the late 60s, and I'd like to thank him for that.
Yes, over there on the right.
I have a friend that lives in New York, and they have a basketball tournament there every year, Rucker Playground. And a friend of mine that lived in that area, he said that John Carlos attended. He said he was doing fine, so that's kind of an update on John Carlos.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and John's been back to San Jose State, of course. John and Tommy Smith both were back for the dedication of the statue. And if you haven't been on the San Jose State campus lately to see that, you really owe yourself a hike. It's a nice campus anyway, but this helps make it real. Thank goodness. It's taken a long time, and that's what we're about. Yes. Next question.
Hello. My name is Alfonso De Alva. How you doing? I was in charge, I guess, of the project that built the sculpture at San Jose State University. So I'm very happy to be here and see you guys and some of the other athletes. I have a picture actually of the sculpture here with me, and I would like to leave it to you if you like, and have it available for people to see it today. For that, one point I was going to say, John is coming next week. For some of you that need to know, I'm going to hook up with him. He's going to be here on the 16th through the 21st. So if you need to talk to him, he's in town. All right.
Great, thank you. Congratulations. That's a wonderful piece of artwork.
Actually, could you bring that up now?
Yes, I am.
Don't want you to forget.
Pictures, as the picture heads up front, let me remind you that if this Speed City presentation has intrigued you, has piqued your interest, you'd like to learn more, you need to contact Marilyn at the History San Jose, 408-918-1050. They're also, or Google her, you know, that's the way anybody gets information these days. And there's also, there are our websites, www.speedcityera.com, and of course, historysanjose.org. So check those out. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Marilyn, you had one more thing.
Actually, I have my business card here with my email address. Anybody is welcome to call me. We are still collecting for the exhibit. So if you have anything, I'm always interested in getting anything. You can send me an email. My home number is on there, or you can contact Marilyn. There's also a website, speedcityera.com, and I believe that has my contact information on there. The exhibit is scheduled to open in January over Martin Luther King's birthday weekend. So we are still collecting. So if there are any former San Jose State students, if you have a cap, some shoes, anything that might document the time you spent on campus, that would be fantastic.
Can I make one statement there? I just would like to acknowledge a good friend and a fellow distance runner, Dr. George Reich. Would you stand up, George? George was a professor of political science at Chico State for how many years?
32 years.
32 years. Currently teaching at Skyline Community College. He just can't quit.
They don't have a track team either.
But most notably, George is also the author of a book of one of the most outstanding track coaches in the history of the sport, and that's Dr. Stan Wright, no relations. And Stan Wright was the Olympic coach in 1970, 68 and 72. So you might want to talk to George about his book, and he has 3 or 4 copies there, and he might be willing to part with them.
Good, Ben. That was great.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Ben. And
Close.
Kent Herkenrath.
Oh, is that Mr. Herkenrath?
Yeah.
Oh.
Speaking of track,
Here's the mic.
Kent, Mike, right behind you.
I was part of the Speed City sprint relay back in 59. I was a token white guy. But I was a poor white kid coming to San Jose State about the same time Leigh was there. And I was a busboy at the Catholic Women's Center. And I don't know if you remember or not, but I do. I remember meeting you the first day you came to San Jose State. And you were in shock. Congratulations on overcoming all the adversities. I had no idea what you guys are going through. None whatsoever. Except when the track team went to Arizona. We used to play Arizona back to back. Just like a year before you came. And my dad had once introduced me to Satchel Paige. My dad was a baseball player. And Satchel at that time was not yet a major league ball player. And my dad told me that injustice just wasn't right. It's not right that black men aren't playing Major League Baseball and all of the other problems. But I had no idea what was going on. And so we went to Arizona and played Arizona State and the University of Arizona. We beat them back to back in track meets 2 days in a row. That's unheard of, 2 dual meets 2 days in a row. We had a great team, great band of black brothers. But I still pride their friendship today. But anyway, arrangements were made for accommodations, and we were told as we went to the hotel that they weren't going to take the black athletes. And I remember thinking, this is Arizona, not Alabama. I mean, that's really close to home. This is 1958, 59. So we all balked, and we all wound up getting accommodations at one of the dorms. But that was one of the hints I had. I wish we'd done more. I think it was just convenient to look the other way, and I wish we had done more. I wish I'd gone to Selma. I wish I'd done a lot more, and I apologize, because I could have been a lot more help. I had one other quick story. 1959, the AAU championships were at Denver at the University of Colorado, and Ray Norton, I had the wonderful privilege of handing the baton to him if I could catch him. I was the world's fastest human, and he was the first one to win the 100 and the 220-yard dash. Remember those yard dashes? First one to win both of those events at the AAU meet, and it was quite a thing. I took fourth in some obscure event, 220 low hurdles, and up in it is now. So are we. Up in the stands, sitting all by himself, but with a few kind of dark glass suited guys, was Richard Nixon. And I went up there. I wanted to meet him, and the bodyguards wouldn't let me meet him. They said he wanted to get his picture taken with Ray Norton because he was going to be running for president year 2, and he wanted the black vote. This is one of the ways to do it. So I kind of they were guarding him and taking him down. They said, I said, Mr. Nixon, I really want to meet you. And I shook his hand, where's Ray? So Raymond Ray had his picture taken, and Ray still has a letter from Richard Nixon. I've been trying like heck to get a copy of it from him. I'd love to put that on my wall of memories. But Ray Norton, Bobby Pointer, wonderful human beings, and great memories. Thank you.
What about, the story, your poem, remember you wrote that poem?
Oh, yeah, Bobby Pointer. I'd known Bobby since the 8th grade. I don't know if you guys remember who Bobby Pointer was. One of the greatest sprinters ever. And he had the oddest style, like way back like this. And, Bud really taught us the art of sprinting, and he kind of got him straightened up a little bit, but he still ran in that crazy form he was. But he was a great sprinter, second only to Ray Norton. And we were playing Fresno State one night, arch rivals, and a lot of us were trying like hell to break 10 flat. We broke 10 flat and 100. And, geez, we even got down to 9.7. You still didn't place in a meet. You run 9.7 100-yard dash. You didn't. Well, we were in the hallway. Tom Lineville, a friend of mine, we were in the locker rooms and we were complaining about that. Geez, do you think we're ever going to get place in a meet or win a race? Here we broke both of us had gone under 10 flat, and Bobby Pointer hurt us. And so Ray Norton didn't run. He was injured, and Bobby was there. Make a long story short, at the last few inches of the race, Bobby held up and let me win the race. And then he scratched from the 220. He said, "Go get him, Herc," and I did. And I won both races. Two sprint races. Running for San Jose State, that was a miracle, especially for a white guy.
We've certainly heard from a lot of winners tonight, all sorts of winners. And now Marilyn has a couple of final words to send us all up into the night, but I hope you've been as inspired as I've been to hear everything that's been said tonight, and to continue to realize that there is still dumb stuff going on around us, and don't let it happen, Been quiet long enough, been quiet way too long, so don't stand for it. That will help keep Speed City and what it stands for alive. Thank you so much, and Marilyn.
Well, thank you to our panelists, and thank you to Leigh for that closing. You're here to that. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This has been a wonderful community discussion. I love it. There's going to be more of these panels. Urla and I are already planning another one in October with the Japanese American Museum in town and a group called First Thursday, which is an Asian Pacific Islander group. And then we're going to be talking with the pastor at Antioch Baptist to schedule another panel at Antioch Baptist Church on Julian and 6th Street. So keep in touch with us. Check our website, call me, and we'll let you know when things are scheduled. And Urla has a series of, about a dozen different panels specific to the different time frames and the different ethnic groups that we want to address in the exhibition. So there's going to be more interesting stuff to come. And Urla, I said to her, we're going to be at Barnes & Noble. There's got to be some great books that we want to ask Barnes & Noble to get in. And so here they are all on this table, and I wanted to point them out to you. And while you're filling out your survey, by the way, and when you're done with that, pass them to the ends and we'll pick them up. This wonderful book is called More Than a Game, and it's Sport in the Japanese American Community. This book was published by the Japanese American National Museum out of Los Angeles, and it's based on an exhibition they did. So More Than a Game is here. And there are two books on judo, Kodokan Judo, and Judo in the USA, A Century of Dedication. We also have an excellent book written by Ronald Takaki, who's a professor at Cal Berkeley, Double Victory, A Multicultural History of America in World War II, which would really be a fascinating read, I think. And then a book by David K. Wiggins, who has done a series of books on black athletics. This one is Glory Bound, Black Athletes in a White America. And The Unlevel Playing Field, a documentary history of the African American experience in sport by David K. Wiggins and Patrick B. Miller. And I think the most recent book to be published on this table is $40 Million Slaves by William C. Roden, who is a sports writer for the New York Times. And its subtitle is The Rise, Fall, and Redemption of the Black Athlete. So this is a very challenging look at athletics and the black experience in the U.S. So, thank you very much, and go ahead and turn in your surveys, and we'll pick a couple of people to receive one of these books tonight.
Thank you very much.